Non-league football is England's best kept secret, so in this video we are going to look why the lower leagues have become so popular. To start with, let's look at the Wrexham effect and the effect Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney have had on non-league football in the UK. As people all know, Wrexham are one of Wales' biggest teams, and they recently were bought out a few years ago by celebrities Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds, and they took over the club with the intention of just driving it up the leagues. And the plan's working so far for them, managing to get promoted in their third season, having a great year last year, and also getting to the FA Cup fourth round when they lost to Sheffield United. But I think the best thing about Wrexham last year was that they just shone a light onto non-league football, really, because even though theirs was a great story, people argue it's not a fairy tale because they spent so much money on the players. They brought someone like a Paul Mullin down 2 leagues basically. It still really was a good story to watch, and that's why they got a Disney series out of it. But good part about that was Notts County as well, because they got 107 points in that league that season, but they didn't get promoted straight away. They had to go through the playoff system, which people could argue is a bit unfair and that they needs changing, which I think they are looking into. However, it also adds a bit of excitement because Notts County, who were fantastic that year, Langstaff up front, who came from Gateshead and smashed the goals record continuously, he's still doing so in the League 2. They still had to go through the playoff system, which added more drama because with Notts County, if they didn't go up that year, it puts massive strain on the club, which obviously isn't a good thing, but it adds more incentive to actually go up, which they eventually did. They beat Chesterfield in the playoff final and they deservedly went up. But to argue that point slightly, I don't think you can go, well, second should go up because they finished 107 points to Wrexham 111, because what if third finished on 106 points? You can't just make allowances for teams who do well. But regardless, I just think it shows how the league format is actually quite interesting, because obviously Championship, top 2 go up, then 1 through the playoffs, and then so on and so on in the other leagues. But even with the relegation battles at the moment, if you look in the National League, from 23rd to 10th in the table, there are only 7 points, which is just frankly ridiculous because, say in the Premier League, most teams can get above 35, 40 points is normally the standard for you to stay up. But in National League North, for example, I support Farsley Celtic, who are in the 6th division, and I'm still worried about them getting relegated, even though we've got 46 points at the moment. It's frankly ridiculous, but quite entertaining as well, that you need over 50 points to stay up in a league. And that is good because, for example, in the Premier League, Sheffield United and Burnley soon will be just dialing it in performances because they are pretty much going to go down unless they make a great escape at the end of the season. It's pretty much guaranteed. Whereas in the National League North, for example, South, to the end of the season you might be able to go up 4 or 5 places from 20th to 15th, 16th, and it's just that constant incentive to keep on going. But I think the quality of the leagues is one of the main reasons why it's becoming so much popular now, because let's take the National League, for example, the best non-league system in the UK. One, their attendances gets better than some countries' 2nd or 3rd divisions. For example, the Serie B gets about 8,000 average attendance. The National League gets about 2,500, which, yes, it's still lower than, but considering some of those teams were part-times a few years ago, and Serie B has Cesc Fabregas managing Como, and it just shows how good England's pyramid system is. And even to go back to the National League playoff final last year with Chesterfield and Notts County, the attendance was 38,000, which compared to 6 years ago in the National League, it was 16,000. It's more than doubled, and it just shows how popular the lower leagues are growing. But I think the Premier League academy system really helps lower leagues because, unfortunately, it's about 0.5% of players who are in academy systems then go on to play for the first team. A lot of them get discarded and drip down to the lower leagues because they have exit trials, they might communicate with non-league teams who are a lot easier to get a hold of, and it's a case where these young lads still really want to be a professional footballer, but unfortunately might not be good enough at this stage for League 1, League 2 Championship. But with these kids, because they've been taught from such an early age from the Chelseas, the Arsenals, the Man Cities, how to act, how to train like a professional, they take that to their local team. But with a lot of players, because the salaries aren't fantastic in some lower league football, they might stay local to their area so they can be local to their family. They don't have to travel as much, and this adds to it because a team in, for example, near Manchester, Chorley, they can take a lot of the players who might be ex-Man United, ex-Man City, ex-Rochdale Academy, and so on and so on. And those players might not want to move away, so they might train for Chorley for a year or so, help Chorley progress through the leagues, and it seems like a win-win for both the teams. Like I said before, Macaulay Langstaff for Notts County is a great example. He was playing for Gateshead in the 6th division, 2 years ago? He got his move to Notts County in the division above, smashed it out for them, and now he's still smashing it out in League 2, and he's been linked to, I believe, Coventry in the Championship. Championship. So it shows within 3 or 4 years, you can go from the 6th, 7th division of English football and progress your way up all to the Championship, maybe even the Premier League one day. And there's been so many stories like this. Jamie Vardy is the main one, that he went all down the way in non-league, then he would play Fleetwood, and then he got to Leicester, and then they won the league, which is obviously a rare occurrence. However, it can happen because we've seen players like Mikel Antonio, Tyrone Mings, Chris Smalling all play for lower league teams, get picked up by a League One Championship team, and then progress to the top league. Due to some players being part-time, it's actually a benefit that players drop down a league because, for example, in League 2, it's professional, so you can't actually work outside of that. However, in the lower leagues, you can have another job because you might be classed as part-time sometimes, which in fact actually sometimes earns the players more money than it would if they were playing in League 1, League 2, which is just another incentive for maybe better players to think of the family, think of if it financially benefits them more, and it adds more quality to the lower leagues. But I think the fan experience may be the biggest motivator for a lot of people to go watch their local non-league club, because as we can see in the Premier League, it's getting so corporate nowadays, and that's good for some people, and that's completely fair enough if it's your cup of tea. However, there are a lot of people who enjoy the more traditional way of English football, and that's where you get it in the non-leagues, because 99% of the time you'll always be able to get a ticket. You can stand around the ground, there's terraces, and you don't have to sit in a seat. You can drink in the game, and I don't actually think you should be able to drink in English football because obviously it got banned from hooliganism, and you see a lot of lads can't hack the beer in England compared to the Germans and all of them lot. So I actually don't think it's a bad thing it's banned, but regardless, if you want to drink in the stands, you can at a non-league ground. But I think even though I do think some Championship, League 1, League 2 teams have this, I think it's still keeping that community feel of football because it has fans volunteering on the gates, in the pub, stewards, everything, and it's still got that grounded reality of football instead of capitalist billionaires coming over and trying to Americanise everything in the Premier League. But I think nowadays, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're not a match-going fan, I don't think you can be 100% emotionally involved with maybe a Premier League team because it just seems so corporate nowadays, and the players seem so out of touch. They're on such high wages, whereas in non-league football or League 1, League 2 Championship, it seems like you have a bit more of an emotional attachment to that team. And I think the fact that clubs mainly rely on matchday revenue to keep them going basically makes you feel more attached, like I said, because if I pay a ticket to go see Liverpool at Anfield, I know that basically that means nothing to John Henry, Jurgen Klopp. They're going to make the money regardless. However, if you're doing it in the lower leagues, essentially paying the club's wages. I think another great thing is, if it's done right, is the marketing of the teams, because as we can see at the moment, the two main ones in social media are #United and Dorking Wanderers, who are a bunch of amateurs on YouTube. And they're two great series because they film all the games, so you can see the highlights, you can see behind the scenes footage, you can have interviews with the players, it makes it more relatable. I think unfortunately, and I understand it with the Premier League and whoever else, they have a full PR team. They need to make sure everything is brand appropriate. They can't put anything out controversial. So you get kind of a less raw feeling about the club, and it's more Hollywood, because like the Newcastle or the Spurs documentary on Amazon, it's fantastic seeing behind the scenes footage. However, they'll have hundreds of checks about that, and the club will have final say on everything, and you don't get to see the properly raw footage. However, if anyone's seen a bunch of amateurs, which I think is a fantastic series, and that Mark Wyatt's a good character, then it's really cool to see, because it sometimes puts him in a bad light, which I'm sure he approves it going out. It gives him more of a character, because Jurgen Klopp isn't always a great guy, and when you can see the flaws in these people, it's actually more interesting. But even with #United, with Spencer FC creating it, 10 years ago or so, it's fantastic to see how you actually can rise through the leagues in non-league football, how you can build an audience, build a fan base through simply YouTube or social media. And I think to go into that with owners, I think it is becoming more of an appealing option, especially after Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, because there are less financial restrictions in non-league, which means someone like a Paul Mullin can get bought from Cambridge after he was top scorer and he actually got promoted into League 1. Someone like an Adam Rooney can come from Aberdeen, who was way above the level of Salford at the time. And although there is also a lot of money to lose, there is a lot of money to gain, because someone like a Wrexham, obviously they've got the contact through Hollywood, but they've got the Disney series. This could happen to a Dorking if they ever get promoted, because the fact that they went from a Sunday League team, basically a bunch of mates, to playing in the National League and one below the Professional League is just ridiculous. And I think the best part about non-league football, you will never see someone hold an iPad up at a game and try and film a penalty or a corner kick, which is my favourite part about it, because when you've seen that at a ground, it gets you annoyed. But thanks for watching. If you could leave a like and a comment, that'd be really appreciated. And if you could comment, tell me who you support in non-league football, that'd be cool to see. But thanks for watching.